Hi, and welcome to the Natural Wellness Solutions podcast. I'm Keith. This is Heather. We're holistic wellness practitioners at Natural Wellness Solutions, and we have some thoughts to share with you today.
And today's thoughts are around burying things. So, the other day, I don't know what I was doing. I was doing something. I think I was having a conversation with someone actually. And they said something about how they tend to bury things. And I think that we can probably all resonate with, like, there are things that happen in our lives that we tend to bury, right? We don't think about them. We want to pretend that they don't exist. And I had this profound thought, or what I thought was profound, so much so that I actually texted it to Keith. So I'm going to read, I wrote down what it said, and I'm going to read that to you. It says, people think that the things that we bury deep within us die there in the quiet and in the darkness of the unspoken words. What people don't realize is that the things that we bury are actually buried alive. They aren't dead when we shove them down, but instead they're forced to slowly suffocate and fight and gasp for air. But they never really die. They just stay buried alive within us until we have the courage to face them and unbury them. And when I had this thought, it was one of those moments where, like, when you're talking to someone and you say something and you feel like it's like almost like God talking through you, and you're like, where did that come from? And it was one of those moments that, like, stopped me in my own tracks about my own life, because with the childhood that I had growing up, there is a lot of stuff that I've buried, but I thought that I've worked through it, right? We all have things that we go through that we think that we've worked through it, but really we've just buried it. But we think that if we bury it and if we throw enough dirt on it, if we throw enough whatever it is that we throw on the inside of us on top of it, that it's essentially just like gonna disappear. But I think that the most incredible concept of this thought was that whatever we bury is buried alive. It's not dead. Whenever we decide to bury it, that experience doesn't die when we bury it. Could you imagine being buried alive? Like, that's a terrifying thought to have. And whatever this experience is, whatever this emotion is, because that's really what it is that we're burying, is the emotion. And whatever emotion that is, it's very much alive. It is very much wanting to come out and be experienced and be processed. But we say, nope, too much, shove it down, get rid of it. It is not safe to deal with. And I get goosebumps as I talk about that, because it's such an overwhelming feeling and thought process to be like, wow, it's alive.
And I think a lot.
Go ahead.
I think a lot of times too, this is a version of ourselves that we don't want to face.
Yeah.
It's a part of ourselves that we don't want to face. And we didn't want to face it. We didn't want to face it to be able to have the experience, but have the journey with it. Let it live its life. Right? Die, and then we can bury it and move on. We buried it prematurely. We buried it while it was still alive because we were too scared to face it. And now it's whatever emotion it is plus fear.
Yeah.
Because now it's trying to come back up, and you're always wondering if it's going to come back up. So when we're looking at these parts of us that we want to heal, we want to get through, we want to move through these things, even if they're buried, you can kind of resurface those, if you would say, actually face them. But now you have to face them with it already knowing you tried to bury it. So it's not going to go buried easy again.
Right.
You're going to have to go through that part of the life cycle and then be able to bury it once it's done and dealt with.
You know, you could even compare this to like a physical illness. You know, like, we'll take some sort of a very prevalent illness like cancer, right? If say that your family member is diagnosed with cancer. You probably know of someone very close to you that's been diagnosed with cancer. Once they get that diagnosis, you don't think, oh, well, we should just bury them now while they're alive. Like, might as well, because they're going to have a hard road ahead of them going through chemo or whatever it is, whatever treatment or lack of treatment they decide to venture on, right? Because it is something is attacking their body from the inside out. We wouldn't just be like, well, sorry, Granny, you got cancer. You get to go in the ground now while you're still alive. Like, that's just cruel. But instead, we find tools. We find people who are educated, who, if we don't have the proper tools and the proper knowledge and the proper equipment to be able to fight this illness on our own, we seek out expert advice from other people who can give us the knowledge and the tools to be able to do so. And I think that emotions are the same thing. Experiences are the same thing, right? If you experience something that is beyond what you feel capable or comfortable or compatible or competent, that was a lot of C's, dealing with, that doesn't automatically mean that you should just bury it because it's, as you said, it's scary. Mm-hmm. Fear doesn't have to dictate something dying or the presumption that it will die, because it, like I said, you put Granny in the ground and she's still alive, she's gonna be mad. You put this experience deep down within you, and it's going to come back with vengeance, right? You've probably experienced that in your own life, of something, some traumatic experience that you've gone through. You didn't face it, right? And it's like the pop bottle. When you shake the pop bottle and you keep the lid on and you just keep shaking and shaking and shaking and shaking until somebody, like, they open the pop bottle and the whole thing just explodes, and you are forced to deal with it, even if you don't have the proper equipment or tools or whatever it is to navigate it. And then you're like, uh-oh, yeah. I don't know what to do now.
And everything has a life cycle, to it, relationship. So even if there is some toxin, some disease, something there that you have to deal with in it, that is one thing, and that's going to be the majority of it. But there are some things that we don't want to deal with that just have a life cycle. And then we ourselves get stuck in that place because we didn't really face the thing that was just a life cycle anyway. Right. Everything has an expiration date on it. Even the things that we do, we get to play some sports for a while, that has an expiration date. We get to go hiking. Hiking is going to probably someday, I hope not, but someday have an expiration date on it. Those have life cycles. And even if there's nothing toxic associated with them, or like kind of like a disease that we have to deal with it, Right. There are just things that have life cycles that we're going to have to face the death of those. And a lot of times those are versions of ourselves. Those are happenings in life, parents dying, things like that. Those are things that we have to face and not just bury before we face them. A lot of just going and finding somebody to talk to is bringing this up, and they're like, oh, we're just talking about the past. But the thing about talking about the past is you're resurfacing it so that you can face it. You can go through that life, so you can have whatever you needed to do to complete that, and then not be afraid of it resurfacing on its own. Mm-hmm. You brought it back up. You resurfaced it. It didn't just do it on its own. Then you faced it. You dealt with it. And then now you can move on from that because it's completed its life cycle, and you fully understand that now. We're talking about this, and a lot of times I don't think people really know what they have in their life that they've done this to. They might have just buried it deep. I feel like I hear a lot of times this from men. You might hear this from women, but I hear it a lot more from men, where they just bury it. That's like a normal thing to do, is they just bury it. They're just done with it. They bury it. They don't even think about it anymore. but it resurfaces. And how do you know this is something that has been prematurely buried? And I think it's when you can't talk about it.
Yeah.
I don't think that you're really healed healed from something if you can't talk about it. And I don't know what your definition is on, really facing something and going through it and healing it. I have my own, but if you want to talk about that a little bit, you can.
I'm actually going to let you go and talk about that, because I had a different avenue that I wanted to travel down, but I'm very intrigued with what your thought process is on that.
I think that when you're healed from something when you're no longer at the mercy of your reaction to the thing when it comes up. So you can respond, it can come up, and you might have some feelings, but it's not just this boom reactive feeling of it.
Yeah.
And you're not at the mercy of that. Mm-hmm. Some people have things come up and they choke up and they start to tear up, and so you can feel emotions and all that, but is that because they're truly feeling it, or are they at the mercy of that? Mm. And blowing up at somebody, you just have this reaction to where it changes how you act, and you're at the mercy of that. I don't think you're healed until the thing comes up, or you have to face it, or it's there and you don't have that.
I agree wholeheartedly. I also, a thought that I had that I just wrote down here is I don't think that a lot of people have the emotional vocabulary either I think that a lot of people bury things because they don't have the emotional vocabulary to define what it is that they're actually experiencing. And if you go through some of our other videos, I think it's under the Heather's Thoughts playlist, there's a video where I talk about emotional vocabulary. And I would encourage you to go in and check that out if that's something, if that's a concept that you're unfamiliar with. Go ahead.
The vocabulary is a really big thing to, even if you kind of think that you understand it, I think just going through a little bit of an emotional vocabulary and understanding it a little bit better is nice for this reason. You might think that you feel negatively about something because of the feeling that you get, but you only know the word for the negative side of that feeling. And so I might think that I feel negatively towards something because I'm like, oh, I'm just angry. When that thing comes up, I just get angry. Mm-hmm. But it might be something that I enjoy doing, or something. That sounds bad, but
usually the opposite of anger is passion, right? So whatever it is that you think that you're angry about, there's probably an altar that's very passionate about that isn't being met. Yeah, and so you might think that you feel negatively about something when really the feeling that you have is positive, but you don't have the vocabulary, the emotional vocabulary to complete that. I just want to add that in there, because for me that was a huge thing. There were so many things in my life that I was like, it's just so, I feel negatively about this. I feel negatively about this. And it was just on and on and on. And then the more I expanded that vocabulary, the more I really felt those feelings and put a definition to them. Mm-hmm. Most of them were positive, but I just didn't have the words to even express that to myself when I felt that. Right. So it's a huge game changer. It seems simple though. It does, but I'm not going to dive too deep into that because there is an entire video on that. But coming full circle with that, like if you don't have the emotional vocabulary to conceptualize and define whatever the experience was that you went through that forced you to bury it, I feel like that puts you at a disservice before you even start, right? You can't even begin to process an experience if you don't know the language of the experience, right? So I could go through something like a good example of this is I've lost 4 parents, right? I lost 4 parents before I was 34. Keith, when I lost my 3rd parent, Keith had never experienced the loss of a parent before. So when he did lose a parent, when his dad passed away, I could tell that there was a lot of buried emotion from him, right? And I'm sorry if this brings up some stirred emotion within you, but there was a lot of things that Keith buried because of that. But because I had the emotional vocabulary and the experience of grieving the loss of multiple parents before he had experienced that, I already knew what to expect. I already knew how to name those emotions that he was experiencing, where all he felt like he was dealing with was anger.
Mm-hmm.
He was just angry that his dad was no longer here. But there was such a plethora, like an entire buffet of emotions that he was experiencing that he did not have the vocabulary to navigate. So what did he do? He buried it. He said, nope, those are things I am not comfortable with identifying or experiencing, so they're going to get buried alive. And it took him, from my perspective, it took him a few years
Mm-hmm.
to be able to actually, probably up until you understood the concept of an emotional vocabulary, to be able to define what that meant and go, wow, there's a lot more than just anger here. Mm-hmm. And to be able to say, okay, these emotions that I never took the time to identify, they're still alive. They are, like I said, they are gasping for air. They are fighting. They are trying to claw their way out, but you just keep saying, nope, 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 shove it down. And finally, when you take the lid off and you say, okay, I am ready to face you now because I have the capacity, I have the tools, mostly that emotional vocabulary, to say, all right, I'm not afraid of you anymore. I am ready to heal from that. And as your definition of healing, like, it no longer has that chokehold, that control. I don't remember the exact verbiage that you used, mm-hmm. but it no longer has the power to control you anymore. So I am ready to face you. I am ready to name you. I am no longer afraid of the unknowns that could happen if I were to face this situation, this experience, this emotion, whatever mm-hmm. it is.
Yeah, and that was my first experience with it. It just seemed so simple. It was one of those things that seemed too simple. But there's something else that really came out of this, and it's that I thought that I was a pretty aware person. Almost not realizing that that's almost like saying, well, I'm already a strong person, I don't need to work on it, or I won't get any stronger. Mm-hmm. So something that seemed this simple, when I thought I had this perception of myself that I was super aware, I didn't want to work on it for a long time. I didn't even want to think about it for a long time. So I was like, I know what I feel. I know it. It's like, yeah, I can feel what I feel, but can I explain what I feel? Can I explain why I feel it? Can I really explain how it's impacting my life with a few words? No, I'll talk myself in circles. So I didn't really have the vocabulary to communicate this with myself, which for me was something that I kind of thought was an epiphany, an aha moment, mm-hmm. Kind of, yeah. But it also led me into, however aware we think we are, we can always get better.
Yes.
It's kind of like, awareness is one of those infinite games of, it's like, did I really think I understood a human, like how a human thinks exactly, and pairing that with what they feel and why that, no, always going to be gaining. I'm always going to be learning about that. I'm always going to be digging deeper. It's an infinite game. It does not quit. It doesn't have an end place to it.
Right.
Just like, everything until it's done, then We're still learning. And for some reason, man, I was stuck. And it wasn't only that I was stuck. I was stuck. There was this fear and this kind of miserableness because I didn't feel free. And I think when you're at the mercy of something, it controls you. Whatever you're at the mercy of, you're not free. You're not free in that area because that's controlling you. It's controlling how you feel. Mm-hmm. When you can be free of that, when you do resurface that and you're able to face it, there is a free feeling that kind of gives you back energy that you were wasting or spending on this thing that you buried.
You know, I remember you gave, I don't remember who you were talking to. It could have been your mom, but you gave this like visual. Keith is great at drawing like parallels to like pictures in your mind of comparing things. And it was almost about like baggage that we carry. And it's like, imagine carrying around, I think it was kind of graphic, but you were like, imagine that you carry like this dead body behind you.
No, that's not what it was.
Oh, okay.
Jeez, so morbid. My goodness.
I don't know.
I don't know where this is going.
But do you know what I'm talking about? Like you're carrying something behind you until you have the courage to like cut it off. Like it's like this huge weight, because we always, you know, we hear the cliche saying of like, oh, that's such a weight lifted off my shoulders, but I don't think that you're actually carrying it. You're just dragging it behind you.
Right. And I do think that, I mean, that it gets heavy enough to where you can't carry it anymore. And then you do start dragging it, you start pulling it. Now in my opinion, there's two things that really we can see in the immediate to do with this. Now, one of those is realize how exhausting this is and just take a break. You don't have to set it down, just take a break and just know that how much you're really carrying. I also think that there's times when you can set that down. You can set the weight down for a second. So this might look like a conversation with a really good friend. This might look like a walk, something like that. You can set that down for a little bit. But when I mention these energy sucking things, they just drain you. And you look around at people and it's like watching a zombie go through life. They're just drained. Everybody is trying to take as many stimulants, as much caffeine as you can to make it through a day.
Yeah.
One reason for that is you're dragging all this with you and you're not quite sure how to let it go. That sounds so, I hate that saying because of the way that it sounds. It's just, oh, just let it go. Just let it go, or just give it to whatever.
It's almost as if it's like passive, like, oh, it doesn't matter.
Right. But that is one of the things, the thing that you can do, and it's not necessarily letting it go, it's taking it out of there, seeing if you really need it, and then going through the process of getting rid of something that no longer serves you, you no longer need, and is hindering you. You have to carry this. Some things we're carrying for other people. Like they put it in our bag and then watch us carry it around.
Right.
And we don't need to carry that. We're storing things and carrying things for other people. So that right there, learning that, I'm making it sound simple because it's short, but really learning how to go through that process is the true way of allowing yourself to be free to it, not at the mercy of dragging the weight around. But so many people are slowing down with their progression and what they want to do in life, whatever you want to call it, your calling in life, whatever it is, because they only know how to take a breath from that. They only know how to take a break. They only know how to set it down for a little bit. But they're dragging so much stuff because the only stuff they've ever let go is the stuff that's fallen out, and they haven't even recognized that it's fallen out. Mm-hmm. when really they should be learning how to unpack that, look at it, examine it, go through it, the whole life cycle, and if need be, let it, like, get rid of it, bury it back in there, but it's in a bag. It's buried in the ground right there, and you're not dragging it with. It's been dealt with.
Yeah. I remember a time a few years ago where I was going through a really difficult season. And I remember waking up one morning and I just felt like a zombie. And I remember like looking at Keith and saying, I don't know what's wrong with me. I just don't feel right. And I remember that he came up to me and he grabbed me by the shoulders and he said, whatever it is that you're dealing with is incredibly heavy, but it's okay to set it down for a moment. Go take a walk. Go take your dog on a walk. Because whatever it is that you're dealing with will be here when you get back. And I remember in that moment, I sat down on the floor and I just cried because it was almost as if no one had ever given me permission to set it down. And then, so I did just that. I went on this walk. I probably walked for like 45 minutes with our dog. And I came back and I remember that when I walked through the door, Keith asked me, are you ready to pick it back up? Or do you want to talk about it? And I'm like, it was such a mind-blowing concept that I didn't know that I had a choice. I didn't know that I had the choice to like set it down and leave it there, even if it was just for a moment, even with just burying things, right? Like you can leave it. It doesn't have to be this burden that continues to consume you. You can set it down, even if temporarily, because it's not going anywhere until you choose to deal with it and heal from it and not let it consume and control you. And I think that oftentimes even just having someone invite you for a conversation of like, hey, this is really heavy. Like, do you want to talk? And sometimes even just that, of like naming what it is. And sometimes we don't even know. Like that day, I didn't even know what was going on. I just remember it being a really heavy day. But I remember talking it through. And at the end of the conversation, Keith asked me, do you want to pick it back up or do you want to let it go? And I said, I don't need it anymore. I'm ready to let it go. I'm ready to get rid of it because it doesn't, like, whatever it was, the permission to walk away and leave it where it was, and nothing bad happened to me. And I think that that's what we're so afraid of, is that if we don't hold all of these things that are so emotionally damaging to us that we can't define, we feel like if we just leave it somewhere, even briefly, that something terrible will happen to us in the meantime. But it won't. And I think that gaining that understanding and having that permission to be like, you can set it down, like, here you go. I'm not lacking right now because I set it down. I set that pen down over there. Like, nothing physically happened. And the same can go for emotions too. Whatever awful thing that you're enduring, that you're ready to let go of, you can set it down. And it doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you incapable. It doesn't make you whatever it is that you're afraid of for setting it down or moving on.
And I think with that story, her realizing that she could just take a break from it also kind of gave her the extra little boost of energy
Yeah.
that she needed to really just go through it.
Mm-hmm. And the comfort of knowing that I had someone safe, that I didn't have to navigate it alone. Because for a very long portion of my life, I was hyper independent, and whatever it was that I had to deal with, I had to deal with it on my own. And when I got married to Keith, it was like this, oh my goodness, I don't have to do things alone. And I fought that for a very long time. Like, he would invite me in so often, and I would just say, nope, 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 I got to deal with it myself. And there were a lot of things that I realized I didn't actually deal with. I buried them until I had someone safe to invite me in that wasn't afraid to sit in the hard times with me. Because I've found so often that there are so many people who are absolutely terrified or highly uncomfortable to sit with us with our pain. They want to fix it. They want to say, oh, how can I make you feel better in this moment? And that's not what they need. Sometimes people just need for you to sit in the silence and let them cry, let them scream, let them vent, let them process. Like, you don't even have to do or say anything. But even as uncomfortable as it makes you feel, if you are the person who isn't going through it, you don't have to fix it.
Yeah, we want to make other people feel better, especially when we see them hurting. But a massive thing that we can do is just sit there, because we think they need a solution to their problem when really us sitting here is the solution.
Right.
That's it. There's no more. There's nothing more that we can give them other than just our presence, just us listening.
Because oftentimes we figure things out on our own. Like, we have all of the capabilities within ourselves to figure it out. Like, you know that old saying, like, everything is figure outable? It is figure outable. But sometimes we doubt that we have the ability to do that within ourselves. So even just like the physical body of someone else being there, and they're like, oh, that was such a great idea, when they didn't even say anything, but they were able to word vomit or emotionally vomit, like whatever it was that they had buried for so long, that the presence of the other person was just like that missing piece, maybe.
Yeah, and I think that it's hard to just sit in an empty room and talk.
Yeah.
I think you can have a conversation with somebody else very easily, especially when it's something that's stressful. I also think that there's got to be something with transference of emotion, or whatever you want to call it, that happens when somebody else is there. And not even to teach people something, what Heather said, that we know, what was it? We know the solutions.
We all have the capability to
right
figure it out.
Yeah, and I think we all have the capability, but a lot of times it is nice to have somebody to ask good questions.
Yes.
Just like the vocabulary, and adding to that emotional vocabulary. It is nice to have somebody there that will you can bounce things off of, that will ask you questions to think just a little bit deeper, that will go a little bit beyond your comfort zone, knowing they know this. They know that even your comfort zone in the moment isn't even comfortable.
Right.
So they can push you outside of that to a place that is a new comfort zone, or just more comfortable, or gaining capacity, so then it is comfortable in there, because maybe it's just a little smushed at the moment.
A little smushed. I don't know if you have anyone in your life that you feel like will ask you those hard questions or has the capability to come up with those great questions. Sometimes I even forget that concept, which is an incredibly important concept because I have someone that I live with, and vice versa, where we ask each other great questions, and they're hard questions. And sometimes when Keith asks me questions, I'm like, I'm gonna have to sit with that for a minute because I don't know the answer. And then I take time and I come back to it, right? And sometimes I still don't know the answers to the questions, but they're always in the back of my mind trying to figure it out. But like I said, if you don't have someone in your life that you feel like can ask you great questions, or that feels comfortable to sit in your discomfort with you, we would love the opportunity to be that person for you. If you'd rather talk to a man, Keith's available. I'm a woman. If you'd rather talk to a woman, that's pretty obvious. But we would love the opportunity to be considered for that position in your life. Our contact information is below in the description. But whatever it is that you're going through, we hope that you have the capability to unbury whatever you've buried alive within you.